In the shadows of Mexico's violent drug war, one name rules about nearly all others. A man so feared that entire towns reportedly went silent at the mention of him. A former police officer, a fugitive, a cartel mastermind, and the leader of one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. This is the story of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the ruthless head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. A cartel that transformed from a small criminal group into a global empire of drugs, money, terror, and power. But how did a boy from rural Mexico become one of the most wanted men on earth? And why do experts say his cartel may be even more violent than the infamous Joaquin Guzman and the Sinaloa cartel? Tonight, we uncover the rise, the brutality, and the mystery of El Mencho. El Mencho was born as Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes on July 17, 1966, in the rural state of Michoacán. He came from a poor farming family. Like many young men growing up in rural Mexico during the 1970s and 1980s, opportunities were scarce. Poverty, corruption, and organized crime surrounded everyday life. At the time, drug trafficking organizations were expanding rapidly across Mexico. Entire regions became controlled by cartels that offered something that the government often could not: money and power. As a teenager, El Mencho reportedly worked in avocado fields and other agricultural jobs, but his ambitions strayed far beyond the farms of Michoacán. Eventually, he crossed into the United States illegally in search of work and opportunity. Instead, his path would lead deeper into crime. In the 1980s, El Mencho lived in California. There, he became involved in drug distribution networks connected to Mexican traffickers. He reportedly sold heroin and other narcotics in the San Francisco Bay Area. But in 1986, his criminal career hit a major obstacle. He was arrested in the United States on drug charges and eventually sentenced to prison. For many criminals, prison ends ambitions. For El Mencho, it may have sharpened them. After serving time, he was deported back to Mexico in the late 1980s. And that return would change everything. Back in Mexico, El Mencho reportedly joined local police forces in the state of Jalisco. At first glance, it seemed like a legitimate path. But during that era, corruption deeply infected many police departments in Mexico. Drug cartels often bribed officers or recruited them directly into criminal organizations. It wasn't long before El Mencho abandoned law enforcement and joined organized crime full-time. He became associated with the powerful Milenio cartel, a cartel linked to larger trafficking networks. Within the cartel, El Mencho gained a reputation for discipline, secrecy, and extreme violence. Unlike flashy drug lords who loved media attention, El Mencho stayed hidden. He rarely appeared in public, rarely gave interviews, rarely allowed photographs. That secrecy made him even more dangerous. The late 2000s brought chaos to Mexico's underworld. President Felipe Calderón had launched a massive military offensive against drug cartels in what became known as the Mexican Drug War. As rival cartels fractured and leaders were killed or arrested, opportunities emerged for ambitious new groups. One of them was the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Initially, CJNG presented itself as a vigilante-style group, fighting rivals like Los Zetas, but behind a propaganda or something far more sinister. Under El Mencho's leadership, CJNG evolved into an ultra-violent criminal empire. The cartel specialized in drug trafficking, extortion, human trafficking, fuel thefts, arms smuggling, assassinations. And unlike other cartels that preferred bribery and stilts, CJNG openly displayed military-style force. Videos began appearing online showing masked gunmen carrying assault rifles, grenade launchers, and armored vehicles. Some looked more like soldiers than criminals. Mexico and the world took notice. By the 2010s, CJNG was expanding rapidly across Mexico. Entire cities became battlefields. Authorities accused the cartel of massacres, kidnappings, torture, and attacks on civilians. One of the most shocking moments came in 2015. Mexican security forces launched an operation to capture El Mencho in Jalisco. But CJNG fought back with unprecedented force. Cartel gunmen allegedly used rocket-propelled grenades to shoot down a Mexican military helicopter. Several soldiers were killed. The attack shocked the nation. For many Mexicans, it proved that CJNG had evolved into something terrifying. A cartel capable of confronting the state itself. The cartel's influence spread beyond Mexico into the United States, Europe, Asia, and South America. Authorities say CJNG became one of the largest traffickers of methamphetamine and fentanyl in the world. And at the center of it all was El Mencho. Invisible, untouchable, always one step ahead. As CJNG grew, so did the international hands for El Mencho. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Drug Enforcement Administration identified him as one of the world's top fugitives. The United States government announced multi-million-dollar rewards for information leading to his capture. Yet, despite years of operations, raids, and intelligence efforts, El Mencho repeatedly escaped arrests. Rumors surrounded his health. Some reports claimed he suffered from kidney disease. Others claimed he was constantly moving between remote mountains and safe houses protected by heavily armed loyalists. Still, even while hiding, investigators believe he continued directing cartel operations. His leadership style relied on fear, loyalty, and swift retaliation. Those who betrayed CJNG often disappeared. As authorities closed in, many of El Mencho's relatives and allies were arrested. His son, known as El Menchito, became deeply involved in cartel operations and was eventually captured. Other family members were accused of laundering money and helping run the organization. Yet, CJNG continued surviving. Unlike other cartels weakened by internal betrayal, CJNG maintained an aggressive and disciplined structure. Experts believe El Mencho learned from the mistakes of previous drug lords. He avoided public attention, avoided luxury interviews, avoided unnecessary exposure. While figures like El Chapo became celebrities in global media, El Mencho operated more like a ghost. And that ghost became increasingly difficult to stop. Behind the headlines and cartel mythology lies a darker reality. Mexico's cartel wars have devastated countless communities. Families displaced, children orphaned, journalists murdered, entire towns living under fear. CJNG's rise coincided with some of the bloodiest years in modern Mexican history. Mass graves were discovered across cartel-controlled territories. Disappearances became tragically common. Many ordinary citizens found themselves trapped between criminal organizations and government forces. For them, the cartel war was not a movie. It was daily life. And while cartel leaders accumulated fortunes, millions lived through the consequences of violence. For years, El Mencho seemed untouchable. Mexican authorities hunted him across mountains, villages, and cartel-controlled territories. The United States government offered millions of dollars for information leading to his capture. Yet, raid after raid failed. Rumors spread constantly. Some claimed he was seriously ill. Others believed he had already died in secret. But in February 2026, their hunts finally appeared to come to an end. According to Mexican security officials, special forces launched a major operation targeting a suspected hideout linked to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel in the state of Jalisco. What followed was reportedly a violent confrontation between cartel gunmen and government forces. Authorities stated that Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes El Mencho was seriously wounded during the operation and later died from his injuries while being transported under military custody. News of his death spread rapidly across Mexico and the world. For many, it marked the symbolic end of one of the most feared cartel leaders in modern history. But the violence did not stop. In the aftermath, cartel members allegedly responded with burning vehicles, road blockades, shootings, and coordinated attacks across several regions. Entire highways were reportedly shut down as chaos unfolded. Security forces rushed to contain the situation, fearing a broader wave of retaliation from loyal CGNG factions. Even after his death, El Mencho's influence remained invisible. The death of El Mencho raised a critical question. What happens when one of the world's most powerful drug laws falls? History has shown that the collapse of cartel leadership can sometimes reduce violence temporarily. But it can also create power struggles even more dangerous than before. Some analysts warned that factions inside CGNG could begin fighting for control. Others feared splinter groups might become even more unpredictable and violent. By the time of El Mencho's reported death, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel had already become one of the largest and most influential criminal organizations in the world. This corporation strayed across multiple continents. Its network moved drugs, weapons, and billions of dollars. And its reputation for brutality had already been cemented in history. El Mencho's rise from a poor rural upbringing to the head of a global cartel empire became one of the most infamous stories of the modern drug war. But behind the legend laws and devastating human costs, thousands of deaths, communities destroyed, families displaced, and generations forced to live under fear and violence. The story of El Mencho is no longer just the story of a fugitive hiding from capture. It is now the story of the rise and reported fall of one of the most feared cartel bosses of the 21st century. A man who survived prison, cartel wars, assassinations, and international manhunts for decades. Until the violence that built his empire finally caught up with him. Yet, even in death, the shadow of El Mencho may continue to shape Mexico's criminal underworld for years to come. Because when powerful cartels lose their leaders, the danger does not always disappear. Sometimes it evolves.